just like that, we are live on the internet. Oh my God! How's it going?
It's going. I'm excited to be here because I don't know. Like, is it just that I'm getting busier? I don't know. I feel like
so usually it's your fault.
It is, right? I've been like, I don't know. I'm a bad partner. But
I know what I was going to say is usually it's your fault. But I think for the last few weeks it's been my fault.
Okay. Well, then you know what? I blame you.
Yeah, you should. Most people do, and I take it.
No, you know what? I'm going to do that. And
in this building,
I'm blaming you.
In this edifice that I currently occupy, it is well known, and I say it all the time, that anything that goes wrong here is my fault.
Well, I mean, the buck stops here, right? I mean,
it is what it is. I take full blame for anything that happens here. It is my fault for sure.
That's kind of like my marriage.
Well, there you go.
You know, it's just my fault. It's fine. It's all my fault.
However, the flip side of this, and I have no shame in saying this, because I do readily and truly accept all blame for everything bad that happens here, even stuff that literally I couldn't even know happened. Right? Some guy in the warehouse put the wrong thing in the wrong box. That is my fault, right? But however, because I do that, I also take full credit for everything good. So when something good happens, I take credit for that.
As you should as well. It's only right if you take it. You know, if you're gonna take the downside of things, you also have to take the upside. So
that is only fair.
That's the only way equilibrium can be reached.
It's how balance in the force is achieved.
What I find interesting though is that I think a lot of people would have problems with that. Like, no, you can't do both. I think it's messed up.
Well, most people wouldn't sincerely take full blame like I do, though. Like, because I really mean it. Like, I really do take full responsibility for everything bad that happens. And yeah, but like I said, on the other side, I think
there's a lot of people who will gladly take the credit but never take any of the blame.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
And when I say take credit, I mean, obviously if someone does something good, I recognize them for their contribution. But
you hired them.
But I did hire them, yeah, and I created the environment in which they could do whatever thing they did. So.
I think that's justifiable and fair.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and it works out good for me because more good things happen here than bad. So it's
and that is a great example of how progress happens. Because I used to tell this to my students. I tell this to my daughters all the time. Success is not linear.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a series of steps back and then steps forward, and what you want is the net movement to be forward. But most people can't recognize that.
And it's also lots of small correct decisions. Like, it's usually not a big, like for us right now, we're doing really well in a lot of things right now. And it's all these like little choices we've made along the way.
That's the key to success in everything, though. That's something I try to point out when I talk to people about making a societal change and changing the way we do things, is that I think a lot of times people are often looking for the quick fix and the big fix. And so, someone who's going to come, and I think this is why you get kind of despots who rise to power, because they promise a quick fix. They promise something, I'll take care of it myself, and all at once. And the truth is that when things change, they change the most when it's a group of smaller things that are collectively making a difference. And I think that's good leadership. So again, if that's from leadership, then you have every right to take the credit, and though you have to take the blame for the things that go wrong as well.
And I do.
Which is interesting that you mentioned that, because I was just asked to speak at a school, which I was honored that it was a young lady who had seen me speak twice. I had spoken once at her elementary school, and then last year or 2 years ago, I spoke virtually to her middle school, and she's taking a class in high school called leadership, and she asked me to come and speak because she was inspired by what I did. And then what was also interesting is that just randomly, another kid in one of the other sections of this class also reached out to me and asked me to do it. So I was like really honored. But cool. I at first was hesitant because I don't see myself as a leader. And I said that to her. I was like, I don't see myself as a leader. I'm sorry. Like, I feel it feels disingenuous for me to come and talk about leadership when I don't see it that way. And she's like, no, please. And I said, okay, I'm going to come, but I'm going to do my own spin on it. And then when I got there and I told them, I said, listen, guys, I'm just a guy, right? And I used the example because I had spoken. I think I had talked to you about this where I was at that talk where I thought that it was. I thought certain people were going to be there. It wasn't. It wasn't.
Yeah. You thought certain Saturday Night Live alumni were going to be there.
Yeah,
and it turned out it was just a guy with the same name.
Correct. So I was a little disappointed. The other people were legit,
which is funny, by the way.
Right? And as soon as I was like, you want to talk about just absolute wind being taken out of your sails? Like I can't wait, and I'm like, yeah. Oh my God, you are not him. So, but it's okay. I mean, it was fine. But I
wonder if he gets that a lot.
He is a brand new speaker, so I don't think that he gets that, but he
will.
He will. That's if he continues to speak. He needs to work on his speaking. When he was done, I really wanted to go up to him and give him some pointers. He was a kid, and he was sharing a painful story, and I applauded him for being willing to share it, but he needs work on his speaking to the group. Like he kept looking down at the floor and was pacing back and forth at a constant rate. So it was constant. Like I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna get sick. So, and I maybe I should have said, I don't know. Like, should I have said something like, lending my expert, like, I don't know, unsolicited advice. So I never said anything, but yeah. And now to backtrack as to why I was saying this, I was actually the closing keynote of this whole thing where they had all these speakers. They had Mark Barden from Sandy Hook Promise. They had Richard Williams, and so some big people. And regardless that it wasn't who I thought it was going to be, it was still a big group of people that I didn't feel that I belonged amongst them, much less closing it all out. And the people who arranged it kept calling me Mariano Rivera because I was the closer. And first of all, my disdain for the Yankees made me cringe at them doing that. So I was like, can you at least call me Edwin Diaz? But no. And so the guy who opened it up was a former WWE star, which was his name is Mark Merrow. He went by Johnny B. Bad. I never watched wrestling, although one of my good friends who owns the hot sauce company that does the hot sauce for us, Hell's Kitchen Hot Sauce, Ron Menon, he's a huge fan of wrestling. So as soon as I posted the picture, he's like, oh my God, Johnny B. Bad. I'm like, all right, dude. Sorry, don't know wrestling, but he opened everything up, and he came out like a professional wrestler would, and he's holding up the belt, and it was all over the top, and I'm like, holy crap, I gotta follow this.
Yeah.
And he had the kids, he riled them up, and he was good. I wouldn't say he was great as a speaker, but he was good. A lot of it was based on what he did as a wrestler and stuff, which was cool. And he shared his ups and downs. So when I had to speak, I was like, that's tough to follow. And I remember when I got up in front of everybody, I was like, I was going to come out holding my belt too, except my belt's just a regular one and my pants would probably fall down. So, but I guess that's fitting because I just see myself as a regular guy. That's all I am, and I'm just a dad who lost his son in a tragedy and found that circumstance put me in a place that I never expected to be. And so that was perfect timing, though, before I went to go speak to this group about leadership, because when I went to go speak to them, it kind of gave me a perspective about what leadership really is. And I think like a good leader doesn't look to be a leader. A good leader finds themselves in that position and rises to it. And so that's what I told them. That's what I think a good leader is someone who rises to a position and takes that position and runs with it, and then takes the responsibility for it. So therefore, I feel based on my definition, you are a good leader.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So
I mean, I definitely didn't choose this.
Right. So, and like, I didn't choose what I'm doing. Like, here I am. I know I speak to former students who are like shocked that I'm still not teaching because they're like, you were such a good teacher. And I love it. I miss it. And I still try to find ways to do it. Like today I'm doing a review class for the New York State Living Environment Regents that they give every year. And so I still try to do that, and that was my thing. But here I am, right? I'm doing this and trying to get stuff done in the kindness arena and the water safety arena. But I never see myself as a leader in it. I never see myself. I don't know. I have a terrible case, and I told the kids this too. I have a terrible case of imposter syndrome.
Well, I think we all do.
I think good leaders do. I told them I think that's actually a good thing to have because it makes you reassess where you are.
Because I'll tell you what, like I am thoroughly convinced that any moment now, any second, it could happen right now. It could happen. This podcast could end, and I could walk out or roll out into the office and and everybody's gathered around like intervention, and like, all right, we figured it out. You're a fraud, and the books are all somehow they're all wrong, and everything is a house of cards, and we pulled the bottom one out. It's all collapsed, and the police are here. Apparently, didn't file your taxes right for the last 10 years or whatever, and also you're being arrested for defrauding people and or what I don't know. I just at any moment now people are gonna figure out that I'm it's all a bunch of lies, and I've been tricking everybody.
Right. I think someone who's got imposter syndrome can relate to that and understand that and totally like, that's it, right? And then someone else can listen to that and be like, oh, what's he hiding, right?
Yeah.
So you have all different types of people that they can be either cynical about it or be like, oh yeah, I totally get that, and that's I feel that all the time. And I was speaking with someone last night who helped guide me on my speaking career. And then now almost roles are reversed, and he's asking me for advice and saying that I admire. I'm like, I'm the one to admire. I don't even know what he's like. Oh, you got your head screwed on straight. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Are you kidding me? I have no idea what I'm doing. I kind of, man, I throw Jello against the wall and see what sticks. I don't know if that's actually a viable approach. I mean, it's gotten me this far, but at the end of the day, I feel like, I don't know. So like when that kid asked me to come speak about leadership, I don't feel like I'm a leader. I don't know. So, but maybe that's the best trait to have.
So before we talk about the way you've been leading the way in water safety in New York State, look at that. You need to tell me about your dad buying a cow.
So we are going to talk about the water safety bill that was passed, but I had, before we were on, I was talking to you. Well, you and I, we have to give some context to this because I don't know how we got off on this tangent, but I asked the question, how the hell is cow's milk?
Well, because I was doing what I always do, and I'll do some right now, drinking this delicious milk that's next to me, which I do all day, every day. And I was saying it was especially good for some reason.
Right.
And I was like, you know what, though? The milk probably is the same as always, because my milk and my mouth is better today for some reason. Like it's hitting better than it usually does. And then you said, well, why is milk always the same? And actually you said, why is chocolate orange juice always the same? Which I think is an easy answer because it's not real orange juice. But the question, why is milk always so consistent? I find to be a much more difficult question. Mike thinks it's simple, it's grain and whatever, yada yada. But I think it's a lot more nuanced and complicated than that,
And like I said, this is a mystery. I'm sure there's many variables, but there is a dairy near my property upstate, and I'm literally, you know what? I know it won't surprise you that I'll do it. I'm going to go down there, and I'm going to ask someone who can answer that question for me because that's who I am. I have OCD, and I have to have the answer to the questions I pose. So, which is great for a scientist, by the way. That's a great trait for a scientist to have. But in this case, I know that there's people who can help answer this question, so I'm going to go find out the answer. How the hell do they get it to be so consistent? And consistent from brand to brand, though. Like you said, you can tell the difference between one brand of milk versus another, but it's consistent. And how the hell do they do that since these are biological creatures that are creating it that changes and stress and things that can all affect the taste of the milk, and yet the milk is great. And we joked about how milk isn't like wine. Now wine comes from an organic thing too, right? A living thing, and it can change from year to year based on conditions. How come that doesn't happen with milk? Like, how come no one ever says, like, oh man, the December 2023 milk was, or actually that's the future. The December 2022 milk was just, that was, mwah, right? No one does that because it's universally the same. So I want to know why that happens with milk, whereas with wine it's totally different. So mysteries to be solved. But I had mentioned, and I thought you knew this, that I had owned a cow, and I literally did own a dairy cow. And
I owned some chickens for a minute.
I've never owned chickens, but I can say I've owned a dairy cow.
I had a couple chickens,
although I've never had it in my possession. So the way this went down, I said this was a great story and I need to share it. When my dad was with me when I was when he was going through his cancer treatments, he was living at my house and I was his primary caregiver. And basically every night I would just sit and talk with my dad. And we were watching some show, and it was some infomercial about getting steaks delivered. And my dad was complaining about the cost of steak. And he's like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy a cow. And then we'll just raise it and slaughter it. And we'll get all this steak, and it'll be cheaper. And it's just going to be great. And I joked with my dad. I said, Dad, that's a great idea. But you've always got these wonderful ideas, but you never think of the consequences. And I'm like, I know you. You're going to get this cow. You're going to get attached to it. And there's no chance you ever kill it. Because I know you. I know how you are. And I said, the only way this would work is if you got the cow and you named it something that reminded you that you got to eat it. So like, you're going to buy this cow, you got to name it like beef stick or something. So that every time you talk to it, you remind yourself that I'm going to eat this thing eventually, right? And my dad laughed, but he's like, no, I can totally do it. I'm like, okay, Dad, whatever. And meanwhile, he's got a terminal diagnosis of lung cancer. So I know that this isn't a real thing. So I kind of just let it go, right? Figure, it's just never going to happen, but fun to talk about. So my dad died in February 2008. And in April of 2008, I get a phone call. And it is from an agricultural company.
Okay.
The woman on the other end says, may I speak to Mr. Specht? And I said, yes. And she's like, Richard Specht? I said, yep. She goes, oh, I just want to let you know, I forget the name of the agricultural company. She goes, your cow is ready. I'm like, what? And she goes, your cow is ready. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And I didn't order a cow. And so she starts going over the specifics. She's like, is your name Richard Emmett Specht? I'm like, yes. She's like, you reside at 25, my address. And I'm like, yes. I'm like, that is me. But I didn't do this. I'm like, this is fraud. I've never ordered a cow. And I was like, am I being punked? So now I'm like, wait a second. I thought it was my cousin doing it. I'm like, were you put up to this by my cousin John? No. Mr. Specht, I don't know who this is, but she's like, I can send you my credentials and I even have your credit card receipt. And I'm like, could you do me a favor? Could you read me the number? So she reads me the number. I'm like, that is not my credit card. And she goes, well, it went through. And I'm like, I don't understand. And she's like, and you gave us your name. And I'm like, holy crap. My dad is Richard Emmett Specht Sr. I'm Richard Emmett Specht Jr. And my dad had changed his address to my address when he was with me I'm like, oh my God, my dad ordered a cow. He actually did it. And I'm like, I can't. So first of all, my father's dead. So there was no way, and I had no idea he did this. I said, I can't take the cow. I have no place to put it. My dad has a place upstate, but I can't leave the cow up there. I'm not up there. I can't do this. And she's like, well, we can't cancel the order. She's like, it's been specifically raised. She's like, that's the whole program that you signed into. It's been raised to do this, and this is the product we offer. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't take the cow. And she's like, well, there's a whole cancellation fee. And I'm like, I didn't order it. You can't charge me anything. And I'm like, you need to talk to my dad. And she's like, all right, well, we need to. I'm like, he's dead. Well, we need to confirm. I'm like, would you like the phone number of a good psychic? I said, because I don't know how else you're going to get in touch with them. So then she's like, well, we can't keep the cow. They'd have to euthanize the cow. I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, somebody can take it. Like, you can't just, I'm sorry. There has to be a resolution of this. And I said, wait a second, hold on. Can I call you back? So she gives me the number. I get off the phone, and we do have friends who are in upstate New York who are dairy farmers. And this was the kicker. I was like, I have no place for a beef cow. She's like, oh, it's not a beef cow. It's a milk cow. I was like, wait, what? I was like, my dad and I talked about a beef cow. She's like, no, it's a milk cow. That's why this is a whole process. Like she had to be impregnated, and so that she can start producing milk. And I'm like, oh my God. So there was a whole process behind this. And now I'm thinking, did my father accidentally order a dairy cow thinking it was a beef cow? Or my conversation with him, something that swayed him, I still want a cow, but you know what? I'll get milk. And this way I don't have to kill the cow. Like, did he see that as his solution to the problem? And of course, now I'll never get the answer unless, again, you do find the psychic for me. So I'm laughing, thinking, "Oh my God, did he make a mistake, or did he want a milk cow?" So either way, I'm still stuck with a cow. But we did have friends up there who were, I called him Uncle Moose. So I don't know many kids who can say they have an Uncle Moose. His nickname was Moose. His first name was Henry. I never called him Uncle Henry. He was Uncle Moose. And so I called Uncle Moose and I said, I know you're not he used to run a dairy farm, but then he became the superintendent of highways in Hamden, New York, which is like, I don't know how you could be the superintendent of highways in a town that basically said you were now entering and leaving the town of Hamden. But he was, and I know he had scaled back his dairy operation as a result of his high paying job. So I was like, maybe he's got room. So I called him and I said, if you have room for a dairy cow. And he's like, where did you get a dairy? And I explained the situation. He's like, yeah, I can take it. And I'm like, yes. So I called the place back and I was like, listen, I've made arrangements. There is someone you can deliver the cow to. I said, but I need one request. And she's like, what? I'm like, can you name her Beef Stick? And they're like, yeah, sure. So somewhere in upstate New York, although I don't know what the lifespan is. This was 16 years ago. I don't think she's around anymore. Actually, and I know, not Henry, Herman. I know Herman passed away. So I can't tell you the whereabouts of the life of Beef Stick, but at one point there was a dairy cow in upstate New York named Beef Stick who was producing milk. And probably for the dairy that I'm talking about. And I'm wondering, was that milk just as consistent as all the others? Mysteries which will never be answered.
So, how much is a dairy cow?
I have no freaking idea. So I knew what they wanted to charge me for disposal. They wanted to charge me over $1,100. So I'm assuming I didn't take care of my dad's finances. Maybe my sister would know. I have no idea what he put down on this freaking cow, but yeah. So my dad literally, I guess, was going by why buy the milk when I can get the whole cow? So
do you think he knew it was going to happen after he passed away and he thought it'd be funny?
Knowing my dad, yes.
Yeah.
Knowing my dad, this was precisely his plan.
Yeah.
And he wanted to screw with me, and this was his last little joke on me. So that's who my dad was, and yeah. Because that call threw me off. And my wife was actually, Samantha was sitting on the couch as I'm like, and all she can hear is me saying, I didn't order a cow. And she's like, what? What are you talking? Like, I did not order a cow. I can't have a cow. I live in, suburban Long Island. I can't have a cow in my backyard. And my wife's like, what is going on? And when I got off the phone with her, she was just like, what? And yeah, so Beef Stick.
I've talked about getting a cow many times. Given the
name of a good company, I just have to look up the records, and they will get her all prepared, and she gets delivered fully ready to milk.
Wow.
And it's specifically for people who want like one cow to make milk for them. So, but
given the amount of milk I consume, it kind of makes sense. Yeah.
Well, there you go. I will tell you this though, which I have had. I've had cow's milk directly from the cow.
I heard it's not the same.
It is not the same. It's kind of gross. I'm not a fan. So, yeah. First of all, you got to mix it. You got to mix it up because it's not homogenized. So the cream will separate from the kind of milk solids and cream will separate from the actual like milk. So I guess what's on the bottom would be equivalent to skim milk. You got to stir it up, and then when you stir it up, it's got, I don't know. It's not my thing. Although I know people who love it. The cream on the top, though, I have to say, the cream on the top is kind of delicious. but it's different too. So I don't know how to explain the difference. It's just it's a little weird. So, but yeah, that's my milk story. That's my cow story.
That's where the expression "the cream rises to the top" comes from.
Yes, that is exactly where that term comes from. So,
no. Very nice. But let's talk about the new legislation passing in the state of New York.
Yeah, so I was asked now 2 years ago by the New York State Water Safety Coalition, which is a group of individuals, swim schools, different groups that have skin in the game in water safety. They had a lobbying group trying to get some water safety legislation passed in New York, which up to that point I had really not been involved with. I'd been involved with people who were a part of it, but I wasn't directly involved. And they had reached out to me and they'd asked if I would be willing to share our story for a potential video that would be shown to parents who give birth to kids in New York State. Now that idea, I can actually lend some credit to that idea, because I had mentioned when I had first met with my partner, Bobby Hazen from And Drowning Now, when I had met with him, one of the things I pointed out to him is that every parent in New York State who gives birth, at least in a hospital.
You mean you mean your romantic partner, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Now
you've let it out, but okay. So when I first met with Bobby, I had said to him that I'm obviously I'm beating a dead horse, or maybe a dead cow, by saying this, that I believe that education is the key to helping this problem, because it's the ignorance of people that's causing this issue with drowning numbers not changing. And I said, if you want to educate people, you got to start with the next generation. You got to start with the parents. So, and I had mentioned because we had just had Melina at the time. So this was about 8 years ago. We had just had Melina, and I said, I've now for the fourth time had to sit and watch this stupid video about shaken baby syndrome that every parent in New York State has to watch. And I said, the one thing that I can complain about it, but the thing is, every time I grabbed my kid, I thought about shaken baby syndrome. It made me freak out about it. So it worked.
Every time you grab your kid, you thought about shaking the crap out of her.
Right. So I said it was effective because it made me think about how I was holding my child, interacting with them. Like, it definitely stuck. As much as I complained about it, it was effective. And I said, shaken baby syndrome isn't even in the top 10 of what could be killing these kids. And yet I have to watch that video. How come the number one thing isn't what I'm watching?
Right.
And he's like, that's a great idea. So I think he then went to the Water Safety Coalition and said, we should make this a part of what we're lobbying for. And I kind of left it at that, never thought about it again until 2 years ago when they asked, would you be willing to share your story for the video? And I said, sure. So Sam and I filmed like a little 2-minute thing where we share our story. And I point out again that drowning didn't kill Reese, ignorance did. And that your supervision isn't the only thing that's going to protect them. Yes, it's the primary way, but supervision breaks down. And you have to understand that supervision is going to break down. And if you don't have those other layers in place, then you are gambling on the life of your child. The end. Full stop. So we did the video, and then I hadn't heard anything. And then I this past year, because I know how political stuff goes and legislation, and people just, they'll talk a good game, they'll yes you to death, and then it never happens. And then we got news that a couple months ago it passed the New York State Senate and was going to the Assembly, and it made it through the Assembly unanimously last week, and is going to the governor's desk to be signed into law that every parent in New York State has to watch this video, which will feature Sam and I in it. Although I have asked if they could refilm the video, because we had kind of filmed it as a proof of concept. And now I'm being told that they're probably going to use what was done. I'm like, no, it needs to be redone. It's terrible. It's really bad. It was just meant to be like, this is what we should have. So hopefully they'll refilm it. But yeah, every parent in New York State will now be watching this. And I shared this on social media. I shared it on both the Respect Life page and my private social media. And of course, my family and friends were like, oh, that's great. And most of the people on Respect Life were, oh, that's great. Until I got a message from someone that was not so congratulatory.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was pretty mean.
You want to share with us?
Would you like me to share?
Yeah.
So I'm going to paraphrase some of the parts because it's a little lengthy. So
should you share the screen, or is that too much?
No, I don't, because I don't want to give away there. I'm gonna give them respect that they didn't give me, but
okay.
So I'll just read it out. It says, and I'll try to cut out any parts that I think give away anything. So, dear Rich, I hope this email serves as a wake-up call to your misguided and intrusive actions.
Wow.
I'm writing to you to express my profound disappointment and anger regarding the recent imposition of a despicable law that forces new parents to watch a water safety video. It is disheartening to witness how your overreaching and meddlesome behavior tramples on the values of personal freedom and individual responsibility.
Oh.
Who do you think you are to dictate to parents, to dictate to responsible parents how they should care for your own children, how they should care for their own children?
Wow.
Your audacious assumption that government knows best reeks of authoritarianism. As a conservative, I find it appalling that you have the audacity to infringe upon the rights of parents and make decisions based on their own judgment and experiences. Okay, so here's what I'm going to paraphrase. They basically go on, I don't want to get into how nasty it was. They basically go on to say that the only reason I did this is because I failed. Okay, so that, just because you're a failure doesn't mean you have to pass this on to other parents. All right, so I don't want to, because it's raw and I don't want to go into that. So the mandatory water safety video is a slap in the face to all loving and responsible parents. It insinuates that they are incapable of prioritizing their children's well-being without overbearing interference like you did. Ooh. Your lack of trust and respect for the very individuals have the deepest love and concern for their own flesh and blood is repugnant. Instead of imposing your ill-conceived notions on parenting on others, why don't you focus on matters that actually warrant government attention? Okay, so, and I'm going to just paraphrase again. It's a disgrace that you waste taxpayer money on legislative resources in trivial matters like this. Don't you have more pressing issues to address? Aren't you more interested in kindness? Stick to your lane. Let me be clear. The role of government is not to dictate every aspect of our lives. It's not your place to mandate what parents should watch or how they should raise their children. This intrusion into the private lives of families is a blatant disregard for the personal autonomy and an affront to the fundamental principles of conservatism. And then they go, I demand that you revoke your support for this intrusive law. Let parents decide for themselves what information they need and how to keep their children safe. So that right there, let parents decide for themselves what information they need. Well, that is the very definition of ignorance, isn't it? You don't know what you don't know. So that is all we are trying to do. And I'm sorry that I have to take 7 minutes of your time when you give birth. But that 7 minutes is going to save lives. So I have not responded to this person. Actually, when you and I, right before, I was trying to write something, and I'm like, I can't. Because my dad used to tell me this, and I think it's fitting considering I was telling his cow story. My dad used to tell me that if you wrestle with pigs, you get muddy too, and that's all that ends up happening. So I'm not gonna lower myself to that level. And the other thing he used to tell me anyhow is like, if you're gonna lower yourself to someone else's level, you're gonna lose. Because they've got more experience.
Yeah, that's the problem. When you argue with an idiot, they drag you down to their level and beat you with experience.
Right. So I'm just going to let it go. I mean, I shared it here, and I'll leave it at that.
Then you get a second angry letter?
I got a couple others being like, I understand what you're doing, but do we really need more laws? And
it's not a law. It's just okay.
I mean, technically it is. I mean, it's a law that mandates that parents watch this. So, and people are just like, well, it's infringing on my rights. And, yeah, your rights. But it's interesting. Before I got this letter, Abby actually, in her public speaking class, had shared in her public speaking class this. And one of the kids in her class brought up like a similar argument. But Abby, being quick on her feet, went back to him and she goes, well, wait a second. Why does government exist in the first place? And he's like, because we need laws. And she's like, why? Why do we need laws? And he's like, well, because people can do bad things. And she's like, yes. You know, the founding fathers understood that laws exist, that government exists to protect ourselves from our worst instincts. And ignorance is something we need to be protected from. So if you have a problem with that, then I don't know what else to say to you. And she left it at that. And I'm like, that was such a good comeback. I'm so proud of you, kid. But yeah, so it's more in that same vein. And I'm not, I know that this person kept pointing out they were conservative. This law passed, by the way, the law passed the assembly unanimously, which never happens in New York. So you had bipartisan support for it. So I'm not sure where that vitriol is coming from, other than the fact that I think it's just people who are just fed up with the ineffectual parts of our government versus the things that actually help. And people can't separate the two. And I get there's parts of the government that don't work. But I know, and this came from my own experience, that stupid shaken baby syndrome video worked. And it works. Every parent I talk to, they remember it. And I remember how badly produced it was, which is why I want our video to be better, because I'm like, that video was so bad. I can't be a part of that. I'm going to go into a grocery store. People are like, don't I know you from somewhere? Oh my God, you're from that terrible video. Like, So I don't want that. But yeah, this is, I think every state should be doing this. We should be applauding it and saying, why isn't every state have this? As a start, because that's only the start. I mean, our next goal now is to get mandatory water safety into the schools, that they have to address water safety at some point. And it's all the, you said it, it's all the little things that collectively make the difference. And this is that first step in a little thing. And if we're not willing to take those little steps, and we're not willing to take any steps, and then, yeah, we can keep looking at those statistics that don't change. I just saw Paul DeMello, one of my favorite water safety heroes, just posted, there's 50 drownings already in the state of Florida, and we're 5 months into the year. And so I feel like it's Groundhog Day. Every year I see the same thing. Like, why aren't the numbers changing? Well, I know why. And these are the steps we have to take, because until the will of the people isn't going to change when they don't know why it needs to change. So, and I don't know, you can share every time things get shared about a drowning, the first thing that happens is the blaming of the parents. And that comes back to the myth that it's the perfect parent myth, and it's survivor's bias, right? Well, my kid didn't drown, so I'm successful, and yours did, so you're a failure. And so be it. I mean, I'm a failure. As a parent, yeah, I'm a failure. One of my children died. I'm a failed parent. Okay. So, but you know what? Talking about, let's wrap it all together. Talking about good leaders, I think a good leader takes what they've learned from their failures and applies it to being successful in the future. So that's what I'm trying to do. And if someone has a problem with it, so be it. But you know what? The law is getting passed, so you can complain all you want. Why don't you put together a coalition and get rid of it? Good luck with that. That's what I should write back.
Oh, you know what?
The beauty of a democracy, you have every right to try and get it repealed.
Send me the text and a Facebook message, and I'll have a response for you in a couple minutes.
What, the actual one?
Yeah, off air. After we're done, I'll send you a reply.
All right.
Copy and paste the contents to me in a message, and I'll yeah, exactly. All right.
I still feel like I shouldn't respond though.
Well, you can do whatever you want with what I write back, with what I give you. It'll take me 30 seconds.
And Eric, I feel like that's only going to be the first one, because once people actually see it's me, right? I mean, we have 70,000 followers on social media. So, I mean, it gets out to a pretty wide group of people, but honestly, that will exponentially increase if every parent's having to watch this video and then resenting me for it. So,
well, I don't,
and I didn't do it either. I'm just a part of it.
Yeah, I don't think people.
I'm not taking credit for it. I'm just in it. I'm not the one who was, in the trenches lobbying and doing all that.
I don't think people are going to blame you for the creation of it. You're just the story that they're using.
Yeah, but then, of course, I share a thing that I'm happy that it's happening and that I'm, super proud. And then I get this scathing email basically blaming me for it. Like,
If 1% of people out there are crazy, which is probably accurate, right? And you have 70,000 followers, right? Then you've got 700 crazy people. So, the fact you only got one letter is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but when Sam and I were on Fox and Friends, and we, shared our story, and this was years ago now, this was like 6 or 7 years ago, we got obviously flooded with messages and like all of them nice, right? And then all of a sudden we get this one message from this lady who doesn't live far from us, which went on, saying, I don't know why you were on there. You're a failure and you should be ashamed of yourself. Who are you to, and this was when we were just doing kindness. We had nothing to do with water safety at the point. And, what makes your kid special? He just toddled off and drowned and it was your fault. And now you're doing this and who are you to do this? And I'm like, wait, what? Like, so, and she messaged me through Facebook. I went to her Facebook profile and on her profile is all these things about being kind and nice. And I'm like, what the hell? And I couldn't figure it out. Like, why would this person send this absolutely cruel and hurtful thing? And I couldn't let it go for a long time. I couldn't, both Sam and I couldn't let it go like that. Isn't that crazy that I got thousands of nice messages and the one that was just nasty and vitriolic is the one that stuck with me and the one I couldn't let go. And the one that made me think that, wow, maybe this is right. How messed up is that? You want to talk about confirmation bias. Right. And you want to talk about imposter syndrome. Like that feeds into it. Like, oh my God, I don't deserve this. You're right. I was a failure. And who was my son was just a kid, right? Just another, and she's like, well, he wasn't a war hero or something like that. Like who, why does he get to get recognized and remembered? And I'm like, because I chose to, because I wasn't just going to let his legacy die there. This was my choice, but yeah.
Well, someone once told me, a very wise person, that you're never going to get hated on by someone doing better than you.
Yeah.
I've never had anyone talk down to me about, or hate on me that's doing better than I am. It's never happened, because anyone who wants to do that.
Advice. Who gave you that advice?
Probably someone I don't even know on the internet. But, yeah. So.
Well, I'm going to remember that now, Eric, because that is, I think that's words we could all live by because it's still tough. And so this email and the one I got from that lady, years ago, it's going to stick with me forever. I'll never forget it. And I mean, I could go on my Facebook and see all the wonderful messages that people wrote about, the legislation, and I won't remember any of those individual ones, but this one I will. And that's messed up, right? It's totally messed up, but it's a good day in New York. It's a good day. Hopefully that this gets passed in other states, and I think it's a step in the right direction. We're finally getting water safety legislation passed.
That's cool. I like it. We congratulate you.
Now, if we can get mandatory pool fencing, that'd be great too.
I'm ready.
Again, case in point. I know people directly related to me, directly like attached, okay, like neighbors, who have little kids, a 1-year-old walking on his own now, and don't feel a need for a fence, other than because there's something else they needed to do. It has nothing to do with the safety of their kid. It has to do with getting something else accomplished that they were interested in a fence. And it's like, wow, but no, I keep an eye on my kid. Oh, okay. Thanks a lot. I'm an asshole. So, but you don't, like I said, Show me a parent who's never uttered the words, "Where is so and so?" and I'm going to show you a mythological creature. So they just don't exist. And just because that happened to me and it was fatal doesn't make me a bad person, doesn't make me a terrible parent. It makes me a victim of entropy. So, but so be it. I can't go back and change the past, but I can move forward as best I can, and that's what I choose to do. So,
amen.
And you haters, you're not going to stop me. All right, you're not going to stop me. Haters going to hate. So,
well,
I have to get going because I had to go to my daughter's graduation. So,
congratulations to her.
Yeah, it's messing with my head, Eric. So,
well, send real quick before you're done. Send me the thing before you go.
All right, I'm going to send it to you, and yeah.
All right, maybe we'll do this next week.
Yeah, it sounds like a plan.
All right. Well, thanks again, Rich, and we'll see you all on Thursday.
All right. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.